Hello, thanks for tuning into my study design presentation. Please sit back, take some notes if you would like, and enjoy. The study I chose is called Examining the Feasibility and Acceptability of a Motivational Interviewing Early Intervention Program to Prevent High School Dropout. So I don't want to give too much away of the study, so I'm going to go over my two main points, which are this study includes, like it says in the title, a new motivational interviewing early intervention program, and that is called Aspire, in which is to prevent dropout among students repeating the 9th grade. So this study is focusing on those students throughout the whole study. The second point I would like to make is that it examines the feasibility and acceptability of the Aspire program through a mixed method approach, which I will get into that in a little bit. The problems of the study were quite surprising and disturbing also. So these are some statistics that were listed in the study. More than 7,000 students drop out of high school each day, and over 1 million students drop out of high school each year. Individuals who do not earn a high school diploma are at greater risk for poor health outcomes and unemployment. Individuals also have a higher likelihood of entering into juvenile and criminal justice system. Also, what was listed in the study was that the societal impact of this problem is so profound that each cohort of students who drop out costs the United States more than $154 billion in lost wages, which is pretty high. Also, retention at any grade, but more particularly in 9th grade, which is what this study is focusing on, increases the likelihood that a student either will not complete high school on time or will drop out of high school completely. Moving on to the intervention. Dropout prevention programs that aim to support students to remain in school, graduate, and enter the workforce or post-secondary education. So the programs include motivational interviewing and the intervention program called Aspire. So I'm going to dig into those last two a little bit further. So motivational interviewing is a collaborative, goal-oriented style of communication with particular attention to the language of change. It is designed to strengthen personal motivation for and commitment to a specific goal by eliciting and exploring the person's own reasons for change within an atmosphere of acceptance and compassion. It also focuses on 4 key processes, which are engaging, focusing, evoking, and planning, and 4 key skills, which are using open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. Moving on to the program itself, for Aspire, this program was designed as a school-based secondary dropout prevention and early school mental health intervention program grounded in MI, motivational interviewing, that aims to support students repeating the 9th grade who are at risk for dropping out. This study also focuses on SDT, self-determination theory, which has underpinned the development of the Aspire program. This program focuses on 4 core skills or common practice elements supported by the evidence across a variety of different prevention programs for adolescents. So each lesson within the Aspire program begins with introduction and with the expectation of the first lesson, a brief review of the previous lesson followed by an activity and a summary wrap-up. So I'm not sure if you can see this quite well, but these are the 9 lessons that are included in the Aspire program that they lean on for the intervention components. So you can pause the screen and you can look at those more in depth of what each lesson includes in this program. The population for this study, like I mentioned earlier, includes students in the 9th grade, those who are at risk for dropping out. There were 13 students who were repeating the 9th grade, which were eligible to be a part of the Aspire program. Listed down below are a little more in detail of the population and the demographics. So they had 13 students, but they were all not from the same location. They were from different schools. There's a total of 3 that were involved in this study. So 4 students were from high school 1, 4 were from high school 2, 5 were from high school 3. There were 7 male and 5 female. However, if you add 7 and 5, that does not add up to 13. So I am not quite sure why that was not included, whether someone identified as non-binary or maybe even transgender, or maybe even the researcher excluded it or forgot to include it. So I'm not quite sure what happened there. But it was students who were the ages of 15 through 17. And there were 8 students who were African American, so 61.5% were African American, 2 students as white, 15.4%, and 3 students as mixed race, 23.1%. Also, 12 students reported that they were not Hispanic or Latino, and there was 1 student who did not want to respond. 7 of those 13 students reported receiving free or reduced price lunch. So, looking at the sample, in 2014 through 2015, the school year picked 3 specific schools, like I mentioned earlier, in the urban school district in the southeastern state. It was students who were repeating the 9th grade, and that's how they chose who was going to partake in the study. Design used to test intervention. So I struggled trying to figure this out, but I figured out that this study was focused on a group design, specifically 1 group pre-test and post-test design. I figured that it was this because the study included a before and after survey for the students and those who were administrating the Aspire program, and they would also compare the information that they got from the data from those surveys. Collection of data. So there were 3 total that was included in the study for what the researcher gathered, which were through student surveys, focus groups, and implementation checklist. So now I'll dig into these a little bit further. The first one, student surveys. They used paper and pencil surveys. They used it before the intervention by asking the students involved with the program their age, gender, race, if they were free or reduced price lunch, like I mentioned earlier. So that was that. And then at the end, they included these next 3 of these bullet points at the end of for the survey. So the first one is the 8-item teacher coach analysis scale. So this was actually for the social workers who ran the 9 lesson groups for the Aspire program, and it was for the students to range between 1 to 5 if they trusted the social worker of the group. So it was either 1 to 5, so I never trusted them, or 5, I always did. The next one is satisfied versus unsatisfied. So this was the question of with the whole program. So students ranged and responded from 1 to 6. So 1 was being extremely dissatisfied to 6 being extremely satisfied. And lastly, within the survey at the end of the study of the intervention, they asked 4 open-ended questions, which asked like, what did you learn, what did you enjoy, and what could you see being changed within the program. Next is focus group, which is an hour long, and it is not one of the social workers that do the Aspire program. Actually, a research staff member asks these questions, a part of this focus group, to the social workers who administrate the Aspire program. So they ask about the experiences implementing the Aspire program, and they ask to tell how they feel the students responded to the Aspire program, and also this is audio recorded and transcribed. And lastly, the implementation checklist. So interventionalists completed a checklist that asked what was implemented for each activity in the lesson. Then after they'd say if they did this activity and it was useful, or no if it was not used, and if it was not useful, then it is written down for the next time or for the next group that they run and do. The first limitation I want to share, which I did not include on the slide, but I want to point out that this program was implemented by MSW students. They implemented this intervention. They went under intense training and had experience with licensed clinicians regarding like feasibility and acceptability of the study. But with that being said, that could be a concern because they're still learning. Thankfully, they had those licensed clinicians to help them, but I just wanted to point that out for the very first thing. But the other 3 I'm going to also share are within the study, the sample size was small and there was a high iteration rate, which means that the study has limited generalizability. They relied on self-report measures, which could lead to social desirability biases in their responses. And future studies should consider being monitoring implementation fidelity through observation or audio recording of intervention sessions, which obviously they would have to get consent, but I think that would be a very good idea. In conclusion, dropout prevention is an important school social work and educational priority. Ninth grade represents an important juncture in the educational pipeline to address this challenge. Intervention research is needed on the Aspire program to address the limitations of the study and to further support the promise of this program as an early intervention strategy to use with adolescents at risk for school dropout. Here is my reference that I used for this presentation. Overall, I really enjoyed this study out of all the ones I did. I didn't really know until now that this is a true concern in the school system. I did think that more 12th graders would be the ones to drop out and not 9th graders. So that was totally new to me because I never would expect 9th graders already wanting to drop out just when they come to high school. But overall, I learned a lot and thought it was very interesting, and I hope you found it interesting too.